The Japanese got a spy. As you may know, July 9th is the end of the 90-day pause of America's country-specific reciprocal tariffs. US President Donald Trump had vowed to reimpose the harshest levies against countries that haven't struck a deal with the US. I have to say that I'm genuinely surprised that of all the hurdles that the US would face in this process, Japan turns out to be a tough one.
We've dealt with Japan. I'm not sure if we're going to make a deal. I doubt it with Japan. They're very tough. You have to understand they're very spoiled. They and others are so spoiled from having ripped us off for 30, 40 years that it's really hard for them to make a deal.
Now, the economic argument here is quite straightforward. The US has a close to $70 billion trade deficit with Japan. Trump doesn't like that. He thinks Japan is exporting too many cars and importing too little of America's rice. Japan is saying the cars are not up for discussion, and we have increased the rice imports from you. Hell, half of our tariff-free rice imports comes from America. What more do you want? That got us into this stalemate. From where I sit, I think Japan has been consistent in its standing. Back in mid-April, Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba had made it clear that Japan does not plan to make big concessions and won't rush to reach a deal. Several days later, his top tariff negotiator echoed the message and said it's difficult to say how long it will take to bridge the gap. And recently, Prime Minister Ishiba even hardened that position, saying Japan is the biggest global investor in the United States and the world's biggest contributor to US jobs. That means Japan is different from other countries. A statement of fact, with a hint of intimidation. The question here is not why Japan is so hard this time, but how. We all fight hard to protect our interests. But Japan has a history of bending to US pressure, and let's face it, it doesn't even have full control over its affairs, given the US's hold over the country. How could this Japanese administration be willing to incur the wrath of America? Well, you see, the Japanese people have a very strong opinion about this particular US president, and not in a good way either. Back in 2016, before President Trump was elected the first time, 72% of Japanese held a favorable view towards the United States. It dropped to 57% in 2017. By 2020, it had fallen to 41%. It went through a significant rebound under the Biden administration to over 70%. Then boom, 2025 came, 55% again. Meanwhile, throughout the past two administrations, more than 50% of the Japanese population see US's power and influence as a major threat. There is more than enough popular support for a tougher stance against the United States, and the Japanese government has been making its own preparations as well. This is how the Carnegie Endowment describes it. America's reshaping of the world order has accelerated Japan's move to embed itself in as many bilateral, multilateral, and regional trade and economic frameworks as possible. Overlapping multilateral and regional groups and moves to strengthen bilateral relations with other countries are more important than ever. A free trade agreement is under negotiation with China and South Korea. Japan is even strengthening security cooperation with NATO, including the possibility of opening a NATO office in Japan as a move to cement relations with Europe. So economic interests, yes, they are crucial incentives for Japan's tough stance against the United States. But politically, both the Japanese people and officials have already laid the groundwork to support that position. My wild guess is that eventually, Japan will have to compromise a lot to avoid economic catastrophe. There will need to be a deal struck between Japan and the United States. But how they get to that place will reveal just how deep the chasm is between the two countries and how much impact it will have on the future of East Asia.